Hey, Andy here from builderhottub.com. In this video, we're going to talk about fixing leaks in our hot tubs. So let's go ahead and take a look. Okay, so this video is all about leaks in our hot tubs. Now, some of the video is more applicable to our DIY built hot tubs, but some of the things that I do cover will help those of you that have a leak in your plastic shell tub as well. Now, before I get going, it's a great opportunity to say, please subscribe to the channel, give me a thumbs up, hit me up in the comments if you've got any questions at all. I'm always happy to help. So there's nothing more frustrating than certainly building a hot tub, filling it full of water, for it then to be losing water maybe overnight or even a few hours. So how do we go about finding, isolating and fixing the leaks in our hot tub? Well, first things first, let's think, well, what's actually happening? Am I just losing water, or is the electricity tripping as well? So the electricity tripping is a key that you're actually getting water in some of the electrical items. Now, the usual culprits for this are the blower or the pump. Really easy to diagnose. Obviously, visually you can check, but when you're turning on your tub, if it trips the breaker as soon as you press the blower button, for example, you know it's the blower. Now, you can go into the spar pack, you can disconnect the blower, and then you can check that way. Likewise with the pump, if the pump turns on and it trips, the chances are that you've got water in those components. Water and the electrical components in a hot tub just don't mix, and it's going to cause you problems. You need to dry them out, and unfortunately, even if you dry them out, the chances of them failing in the future are a lot higher once you've got them wet. Certainly with a pump, you've got a coil in there, the coil goes rusty and it starts tripping, and that will cause you all sorts of problems. So if you can, please try and keep those electrical components dry. Now, the blower. On our DIY hot tubs, we always make sure that we've got a check valve, because on the DIY hot tubs, we've actually got those gunite bodies where the air and the water mixes. So if you don't have a check valve, and ideally you should have that Hartford loop in there, which is where it takes the pipe up over the water line. So even when those air and water lines mix, the water isn't allowed to travel back through to the blower because of that Hartford loop. So they're always a good thing to put in. So when we're looking for the leaks, because as I said, this video is all about leaks, we're visually seeing the depth of the hot tub drop. So this is the first thing that's key. So visually, you're going to look around, check for any plumbing leaks that you can see, check if when you turn the pumps on, or not so much the blower, it's more about the pumps with the water. Turn the pump on, put the pump on full, and then go and examine any of the pipe work, because when it's under pressure, you can often see those leaks as well. Now, if you do see a leak in the pipe work, my advice, if you can, cut it out and remake it. Don't try and plug it with sort of the epoxies or the sealants. You can get things like JB Weld, and they're great products, but for the long run, the best thing to do is actually cut out any part that actually leaks and remake those joints, and it will just last so much longer, and it's also a weight off your mind that it's going to leak and fail in the future. What about if you can't visually see where the leak is coming from, which is quite popular. Now, I must say that most people do have some form of a leak when they build their own hot tubs. It's just the way it is. The reason being is that we don't have the specialist equipment to be able to pressure test all of the pipe work before we actually build. And this is normal. This is one of the, I guess, downsides of doing it as a DIYer. We can't really test our plumbing and our pipe work before we finish the tub and actually fill it with water. So that's generally why we do have some leaks. Now, the level of the water and where the water's actually dropping to is important. And it's always a really good idea to see after a period of time whether the water will actually level out, because it will give you, and by level out I mean it stops dropping. Now this gives us a really good indication to where the actual leak could be. What do I mean? Well, for example, if you have, say, a skimmer on your tub. Now your skimmer is usually higher than your jets, and if the water line levels off and stops dropping at the bottom of the skimmer, then the chances are that you've got a leak either in the skimmer itself or in the pipework coming from the skimmer. You see what I mean? It's kind of logical. We've got to work out where the water will level off, and then we can delve in and actually look at the pipework. What I will say is it's very rare that a tub will actually drain itself all the way down. It's generally a leak that could be found in the jet pipework, in the actual jet bodies themselves where you've sealed around them coming into the tubs. These are the prime candidates on our DIY hot tubs for areas that are going to leak. Another popular one is if the water drops, and it drops but levels at the middle of the jets, then the chances are you've actually got a leak on your airline. Now, why is that? So for this explanation, I've got a gunite body here. Now, these are what form or are used to help form the jets. On the front here, this goes through the wall and into the hot tub. So quite often, if you haven't got a good seal around the 2.5-inch pipe that's going through the tub, then you can see leaks there. These are less common because when you're building your DIY tubs, most people are really, really careful to actually seal really well around these jets. Now, I mentioned, what about the water sitting at the middle of a jet? Well, if we look at where the middle of this gunite body is, it's about here, if I sort of do this on the camera. Now, if the water level drops here, but then levels out here, and I'm just looking at my monitor so that I can actually indicate the right place here, what does that mean? Well, these two are actually joined. There's a hole that you won't be able to see on the camera. You might be able to just in there, and that's because the air and the water mixes in the gunite body. Now, if your water is dropping through the airline but then levels out in the middle of the jets, the air pipe is higher than the water pipe. If it stops at the water pipe, then your water pipes are sound and you've got a leak in the air pipe. Hopefully you're kind of with me here. So if the water's up here, water level drops but then is leveling out in the tub around here, if we come across, that means the water pipes, which are your 2-inch pipes, are actually okay, and the problem is actually with the air pipe. So quite often, and I actually had it on my own tub, I had a leak on the air pipe, but I didn't think that because it was an air pipe, it was going to have water in. You've got to remember that with these gunite bodies, the air and the water mixes, so both sets of pipework carries water at some stage. Now, what I would also say is on our DIY hot tubs, it's actually quite rare that the physical structure is leaking. Now, the reason being is we tend to spend or certainly invest a lot more thought on how to actually waterproof the structure. So when we're waterproofing the mortar, we're then sealing the mortar mix either with a chemical sealant or with a painted sealant. We're then adding adhesive and tile on. So all of these layers are actually helping us create a watertight vessel. So I would say 9 times out of 10, if you have a leak, the chances are it's in your plumbing and not in the actual structure itself. Okay, so before we move to look at some of the solutions that are available to fixing leaks, I want to spend a couple of minutes just talking about some leaks on plastic shell tubs, because the chances are that some of you that are watching this are looking for leaks on your plastic shell tub. Now, with a plastic shell tub, it's generally a lot easier to actually spot where the leak itself is. and that's because it's all self-contained, so you can generally remove the panels. However, most of you will have these placed either in ground or against a wall or in a corner, and it can be quite difficult to get into the cabinet itself. So if you can, drain it down, move it out so that you've got full access to get round the actual tub itself. You can remove the sides and then you can see clearly all of the plumbing underneath. Now, with the plastic shell tubs, you've got a lot more joints to actually check, and the same principles as before. Fill it up, have nothing running, see if you can physically see any of the leaks. If not, turn your jets on, it adds a bit of pressure on the pipework and you should be able to see them quite clearly. Now, with a plastic shell tub, most of the pipework underneath is glued on and then it's Jubilee clipped as well. So those Jubilee clips are the metal clips that go round the pipe that you can then use a screwdriver on. If you have a leak on a particular push-in connector, if it doesn't have a Jubilee clip, that could be a quick and easy fix. Just go and pick one up at the hardware store, put that round the actual fitting itself, tighten it up and you should be just fine. If you have any physical leaks on the joints, on some of the larger pipework, so your 2-inch water pipework, maybe on your heater union or your pump union, you're going to want to cut that out and replace it. Just as I said with our DIY hot tubs, you don't want to be looking really at trying to patch up a leak in terms of the solvents that you can find online and the putties, the epoxy putties that you can use. Cut it out, replace it, and it will last much longer than if you try and kind of patch the joint. Patching the joint, because it's pressurized pipe, it generally always leaks. Once it's started, you might temporarily stop it, but eventually you're going to have to go back and do it again. So if you do spot a leak on something like a union, and by the unions I mean where the physical joints are, okay, so if you've got a leak that's dropping from, say, underneath the union, then the chances are it's a rubber seal that's gone. So turn everything off, undo it, take the seal out, have a good look at it. If it's got residue on it, if it's cracked at all, then that's going to be your culprit. Now, on your pump, you will have 2 seals. On your heater, either side, you've also got 2 seals as well, and they do go over time. So if you've got an older tub and it is leaking from those particular parts, unscrew them, and if they're too tight, you can get oil filter wrench. It's what I use, and they're inexpensive. Pick them up for 10 bucks on Amazon, and they're like big clamps, and you can undo it nice and easily with those oil filter wrench. Replace those rubber rings, the gaskets, screw it back up, you'll be just fine. And lastly, if you are getting stuck, you can hit me up in the comments, send me a photo, and I'll see if I can advise you in any way. Okay, so back to the DIY hot tubs and what we can do to potentially fix leaks in pipework. So how do we repair the leaks? Well, as I said earlier in this video, if you can find it in the physical pipework, cut the pipework out, remake the joint. Don't try and patch it. It's not a good idea. It's a temporary solution, and the chances are it will actually leak again in the future. If you've seen some of my earlier videos or my videos on my control room remodel, you can see the horrendous pipework that I had originally in my build, and it leaked, and it's full of putty and trying to patch it all up because I had no choice. That was all I could do. However, once I've cut all of that out and remodeled, you can see that well-made joints don't leak. So, part of the prevention of leaks is make your joints properly, and I do have a video on the channel for how to make the perfect joint. So, what about if you can't actually find the pipework that's leaking? Well, this gets a little bit more tricky. I do know there are people out there that will come and hunt down leaks. If you watch TikTok at all, there's a wonderful channel on there, a guy called The Leak Detective, and he goes and finds leaks in all kinds of pools and hot tubs. He's got specialist equipment, he's got dyes, he's got water tracing, he's got gases that he can real professional outlet. But for us DIYers, not really an option unless you want to get a pro in. So what can we do? Well, quite a few of my customers have actually used those leak stop solutions, and there's a mixed review about these online. You can find them on the likes of Amazon quite easily. Just type in pool leak stop, something like that, and you'll get a whole bunch from various manufacturers. I can't attest to how good they actually are, but I do know that some of my customers have had great results with using these solutions. And the way that they work is you remove your filter, you pour them in, and you let the circulation run, and over time, number of hours, the solution, I think, bonds together, and it can block up. Most of them say they can block anything up to around about 1/8 of an inch hole, 1/8 of an inch in size. So that's a solution. If you can't actually find it, it's worth trying. It's relatively inexpensive. I think they're around 40, 50 bucks a kind of container. And that's enough to kind of put in and basically give it a go in the actual hot tub. So the leak stop solutions are only really going to be useful to you if you can't visually find the leak and your water is dropping and it's leveling at a particular level. It's going to be no good if it's going to drain all the way down and out of your actual hot tub vessel. The chances are that you're going to have to go back and look at the ceiling on the concrete or the blocks, and that's going to be more of the culprit than the actual plumbing. Leaks can be annoying. Persevere with them. It's well worth it, because the end result is that fantastic hot tub that you built yourself that you're going to be really proud of. Don't give up. Chase those leaks down and try and fix them. I know it's incredibly frustrating. I've had several over the years myself, which I've been pulling what little hair I have out. You will get there in the end. You will do it, so don't give up. As always, I hope you found this video useful. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Hit me up in the comments if you've got any questions, and I will see you on the next video. Thanks for watching. If you've liked this video, please do like, share,